Well, thank you all for coming back. I really appreciate you, as I always do. And as I always tell you, tell 50 friends to tell 50 friends. And again, if you have 50 friends that says something about you, it means that you're special. And you probably don't have 50 friends. They act like they're friends anyway. I won't even get into that. But let me get into what I want to talk about today. All right. People are funny, but that's not really anything that you don't already know. And yeah, but one of the things that makes them, and I guess I should say us, considering the fact that I am a person. But anyway, one of the things that makes us interesting is that we have a tendency to view things through our own little prism, which might not necessarily be reflective of the truth. For example, I was having a conversation with a woman the other day, like I do. And in this conversation, she was talking about her issues with men, which isn't anything new. Most women that I talk to, especially when talking about dating someone, they spend a decent amount of time, pretty much, for lack of a better word, vilifying men. So I'm used to all of that. But one of the things that she mentioned was that men just have too many options. And I responded by saying, well, women have options too. Women actually have more options. Are you saying that we as men need even fewer options than we have because we can't handle more than one option? Is that what you're trying to get to? And she didn't really answer that question, maybe because of the way that I phrased it, or maybe she didn't understand what I was really asking or the point that I was trying to get to. But I didn't really get a clear answer on that. Instead, she took issue with my comment about women having more options. I, well, to say that she took issue with it, that might be a little strong, so much as she disputed the truth of what I was saying. Basically, she does not believe that women have more options than men, or at least she didn't when she brought that up. It goes back to that whole thing about men having women to one man, 7 women to one man, and all of that bullshit that people always say, that myth that has been perpetuated, that even though it's been proven to not be true, women still want to kind of glom onto that as if it's true. But anyway, so I offered her a world example, and I pointed to online dating, which I've pointed out before in podcasts in the past. And I asked her how many men did she get in her inbox, her online dating inbox, just the last week. And she responded by saying that it was like too many, and that it was so exhausting going through all of them. So the number that she mentioned was like somewhere between 25 and 50 just in the past week. And I told her that I got like 4 in my inbox, people that initiated contact with me or communication with me that I didn't have to reach out to first. And even for some of you all that would be like, well, that just speaks to how pathetic I am. First, I respond to that by saying, well, fuck you. But then I say, no man is getting more online or real world action for that matter than the average woman. It's just not the case. So I asked her if she's getting 6 or more times more action than I'm getting in my inbox, how does she figure that men have more options? And she really didn't have an answer for that. And that's why I pointed out, like, excuse me. And that's why afterward I pointed out that if she and I were walking down the street, who'd be more likely to get hit on? And the reason I brought that up is because women, even though everybody's in the online dating pool, people still don't see it as real. And like I said, I think last episode or a couple episodes ago, we need to start looking at it as real, because this is the not just the future, but the now. So even if she didn't think it was real, still, in walking down the street, how many times would she get hit on if she and I were walking together? Well, not together, because guys might be deterred by the fact that she's walking with another dude. But when she walks down the street, does she get hit on? Yes. And that's exhausting as well. I don't often get hit on blindly while walking down the street. Now, it has happened, but I'm not even gonna like put myself in that box and say, well, yeah, women just fall at their feet when I walk by. And that's the case for most guys, even attractive guys. Well, I'm an attractive guy. What am I talking about? Even like the Idris Elbas, because he's the one in my fallback. Women might look at him, but they might not approach him as much as an equally attractive or even a less attractive woman might get hit on. But I think you all get what I'm saying. But eventually, in the back and forth that she and I had, we eventually got to the root of the problem. See, because she's not satisfied with her options, and I think that applies to many women and ladies, you can let me know if I'm right on this one. But because she wasn't satisfied with her options, if she's not satisfied with her options, then she feels that those options shouldn't actually count as options. Like, if a guy approaches her and she doesn't like that guy, she doesn't see him as an option. And that's kind of flawed logic. But again, it seems that many women that I've spoken to feel this way. And it presumes that men are satisfied, we're satisfied with our options. And that's not necessarily the case. The difference is that if a man has between 25 and 50 options, like the woman eventually said that she had just last week from online dating, if a guy has 25 to 50 options, and none of them may be as tight, mind you, but he'll pick out a few that he'll knock down. And for the record, for newcomers to this podcast, when I say knock down, use that phrase, it basically means that he'll have sex with them. He'll pick out a few that he'll have sex with at least. And that's the difference. Women have way more options, but for them, it's a zero-sum game. And it's all or nothing for you all, for you ladies. Yeah, and I guess it's right to say you instead of them, since I'm talking to you ladies, and we're all in this together. So it's not a us versus them, but talking to you ladies. But yeah, it's all or nothing for you all. For us, and when I say us, I refer to men looking for long-lasting relationships. For us, if we can't find our soulmate, that doesn't mean that all is lost. Something is better than nothing to us. And sex is better than nothing to us men. Sex is definitely better than nothing. I mean, what are we talking about here? So, ladies, you can view your options in the same way if you choose to, and thus make the most of your options, even if the options aren't really all that optimal. But because you don't like your options, it doesn't mean that they are not options. They are still options. But this brings up an interesting point that women need to be aware of, ladies. When a guy approaches you, you should never just assume that he sees you as his possible soulmate. You could be one of his options, as you are one of his, but you could be an option that he's settling for. He may not really like you enough to ever wife you, but you look good enough to hit. And again, if you're new to this podcast, when I use the word hit, it also means have sex with. Kind of reminds me of that scene in Mo Better Blues. And for all of you, if you hadn't seen Mo Better Blues, shame on you, and you need to go watch it. It's a Spike Lee flick featuring Denzel Washington and Wesley Snipes. And Denzel Washington was actually having a conversation with Cinda Williams, who played his love interest in the actually played both their love interests in the movie. And uh, they were talking about different phrases for having sex, and he just ran them down. And one of them that he came to was Mo Better, and thus the Mo Better Blues, basically the sex blues. And he had a lot of blues during the course of that movie, but go see it if you hadn't seen it. And if you hadn't seen it, go watch it again. It's a great flick. Anyway, I think it was Spike Lee's best flick, to be honest. Yeah, I feel comfortable saying that. Even better than Malcolm X. Definitely better than that bullshit like Chirac. But that's neither here nor there. But so yeah. So basically, he'll never wife you, but you look good enough to hit. Yeah, yeah. And when I say that, that's not even saying that he may necessarily see you as looking good. So when I say looking good enough to hit, that doesn't necessarily mean that he even finds you attractive. And it's not to say that you're not attractive, but beauty is in the eye of beholders, and it is what it is. Yeah. Yeah. Looking good enough to hit and looking good are two completely different things that just happen to include a couple of the same words. It's like the old days when you be in the club and you knew that the club was about to close. And then you started desperately looking around at who was available, who was still there, your available options, because you didn't want to go home alone. And you didn't have the best set of options, but they were options. Men kind of have a better understanding of this than women do, even though in this age of women's savagery, I think women more and more are having a better understanding. I think part of the problem is that some of the women that do have an understanding of that example that I just used, they just don't necessarily think it applies to them. Whereas I think guys sometimes have a better understanding that if a woman is getting with a guy, especially if a woman is choosing to sleep with a guy, that might not necessarily mean that that woman has feelings for them or thinks they're attractive or anything like that. Doesn't mean that it wouldn't hurt if you're really interested in that woman and she's using you in a way that a woman might traditionally use a woman. Anyway, a man might traditionally use a woman, but those bad men out there. Anyway, back to women assuming or not assuming that a man sees them as a possible soulmate, or when ladies listening, whatever. Uh, yeah, back to you. Assuming that a man sees you as a possible soulmate. That's why it's incredibly important that you ladies pay attention when you're dating a guy. Um, a man that's interested in you will act like a man that's interested in you. You know, part of the issue that I hear from way too many women, and I can't even like dispute it to a certain extent. Me and Reggie talk about, you know, being honest about the choices that you make, but um, a lot of these guys are predators. I can't defend it. I mean, I would like to, but I can't. Um, there is truth in some stereotypes, and there is some truth in that. So, but ladies, don't trip. Y'all have your own truths too that are based in stereotypes that are true too. But in this case, yeah, guys are predators. So you can't necessarily listen to the things that they say. You have to see how they act. And their actions will tell you if they're really interested in you. Some women out here will get a call from a guy once a week, and based off of that once a week call, they'll convince themselves that he's truly interested. And it's like, come on now, the guy is interested in you and he's only reaching out to you once a week, like through text. Nah, he's not really interested. And we've all liked someone, male, female, dog, cat, whatever it is. We've all liked someone. And when we do, we all know the feeling of thinking about them all the time. And that's not just stuff that's reserved for teenagers. That also applies to the demographic of this podcast. And again, for newcomers out there, out here, the demographic of this podcast is, it caters to those of a certain age, that age being people in their 40s, 50s, and up. Now, with that said, if you're younger or older, of course, we welcome you, because I think everybody can get some of this game and you know, get some of this game, and it'll help them in their relationships. Yeah, I like that. But but the point is that, like I said, it's not just reserved for teenagers. Everybody know what it's like to like someone and to be liked by someone. You know, get the butterflies, get the good feelings. You're thinking about them all day, or at least a good part of the day, wondering what they're doing and all of that stuff. That stuff never really goes away if you really like somebody. And you should expect someone to act a certain way. And if they like you, and if they don't act that certain way, you need to treat them, you need to deal with them or handle them in that way that they're acting towards you. But instead, too many people, and unfortunately, it happens a lot to women. Guys, it happens to guys too, but it happens a lot more to women, I would say. Um, but women oftentimes, and again, guys do it too, they'll make excuses for some of these guys and project their feelings onto that guy when that guy really isn't feeling that way. And some people are just so desperate for love. And I know that desperate is one of those bad words that someone should never use, like being lonely. Nobody wants to admit to being lonely. Nobody definitely wants to admit to being desperate for love. But some people are so desperate for love. Some women are so desperate for love that a guy get them a blade of grass and they'll act like it's a rose. But I think you get the point. But just in case, let me be a little bit more clear for you ladies listening out there, because I want you all to get something from this, and just be leery of the guys that you meet, not in that way that comes across as negative, guilty until proven innocent, but just realistic. And not realistic because you've heard these stereotypes and rumors, or because something happened to you, your last relationship. But just aware. But like I said, let me be clear. Ladies, just like you can put a guy in the friend zone, men can put you in the fuck zone. In the same way that a guy in the friend zone will most likely never get to fuck you, a woman in the fuck zone will most likely never get more than fucked. You'll never be the girlfriend, let alone the wife. Just like he'll never be the boyfriend, let alone the husband. But he most likely won't even get sex. At least you'll get sex. But from talking to women who have just gotten sex, that's just not enough. Makes you feel kind of empty inside. So I've heard. But hey, some people are cool with that. Some people but if you really like somebody, you're not trying to just settle for sex. Yeah. If anything, you just think you can fuck the person into liking you, which can happen, I guess. I don't know. I don't know. I just think of like guys out here in these streets playing that friend role with the hope that someday, like those bootleg romantic flicks, someday the woman of their dreams will see them as more than a friend. I think about these dudes out here who are in love with these women and stuff like that, and the women are like telling them about their experiences and dating other dudes, and the dude in his heart of hearts is saying, well, why don't you like look at me, I can love you better than he can. Yeah, okay, we all have choices to make. Yeah. Anyway, some women believe, like I just talked about guys in the friend zone, some women believe that they can dig their way out of the fuck zone. It rarely happens though. Life has its cruelties, man. But anyway, but the point is, let's get off this BS narrative that men have more options. That's the whole point of all of this, because men don't have more options. Women have way more options. But for us men, we just make the most out of our options. And women are too selective with their options. And so it goes. Sarate, as Pootie Tang would say. Anyway, let me move on. I want to celebrate love right now. And usually when I close these episodes, that's not the case. Usually I'm talking about somebody that died, or somebody who's getting divorced, who has just gotten divorced, or something like that. And while I'm sure there are many people who have died since the past episode, and many people who have filed for divorce after being married for 20 years or so, uh, yeah, I don't want to talk about them. Not now. I choose to talk about a reunion on this episode. And the word on the street is that Lisa Bonet and Jason Momoa are back together. Now, I don't know Lisa Bonet, obviously, and I don't know Jason Momoa, obviously, but just the fact that two people were broken up and now they're back together, or rumored to be getting back together in a celebration of love after being together for 157 years, it makes me happy, actually. And again, well, I'm still not 100% sure that it's true, because how much can you actually believe on the internet? But still, I'm going to take it as true. It's because I'm going to take it as true. And that's because I love love. Despite the way it might sound when I'm talking on these podcasts, I do love love. And like I always say, I'm going to be married. And I look forward to that day when I meet my soulmate and she and I agree. And yeah, and I get married. It's going to happen. So that's that. And that's actually not the close. This is the close. You know, and talking about men and women relationships and talking about the friend zone versus the fuck zone and women having options and women need to do this when choosing men and all of that stuff. I know that me and Reggie, well, I know Reggie is not the most positive when it comes to women. And a lot of you complained about that when he was on the show and he played into that. I've always taken pride in not playing into that role. And even though it might have come across as such sometimes, I never meant to perpetuate that whole us against them thing when it came to men versus women. And I know we all have our frustrations. I know men have their frustrations with women. We sure do. And ladies, you have your frustrations with us. And even as you listen to this podcast, you saw that I was honest about men out here being predators. And I try to be fair handed in the criticisms that I have for men and women and mentioning that we have to do better. The problem seems to be sometimes that people, and it goes back to when I started the podcast, this episode talking about people seeing through things through their own prism. It goes back to that. It's funny, I am critical of men and I'm critical of women, but it seems like women only hear when I'm critical of the fellas. I mean, women only hear when I'm critical of them, and they kind of ignore the criticisms that I have for the fellas. Fellas don't do it as much, but some fellas have pointed out to me that I'm trying to pander or cater to women. So when they say that, it's like they're not hearing the criticisms that I'm laying on women. They only hear the criticisms that I'm laying on the guys. So it's funny how, regardless of what side you choose, um, the other side, I always say I'm being too harsh on one side and not the other side. But I guess that shows that I'm doing it right and I'm playing it down the middle, even though I am a guy, I date women. So obviously, my frustrations with women might come to the forefront a little bit more, but I still try to offer fair criticism of both sides. I mention all of this because despite all of the us versus them, the back and forth and all of that, and the rise of people like Kevin Samuels and such like that, I do want to take this time at the close of this episode to acknowledge that May 8th was International Women's Day, and March, which we're currently in. Hopefully you're listening. Well, who knows when you're going to listen to this, but if you're listening to it currently, we're in the month of March. And if you're listening to it after March, thank you for listening at all. But March is International Women's Month. And like I just said, in this world with the whole battle of the sexes and everything, like when women look at men as cheaters, looking just for the next hit, and men think that women are just gold digging drama queens and all of that stuff. Some is true, some is not true for both sides. Either way, we all need to like focus on ourselves and, making ourselves better and less time criticizing the other side. We need to make better choices as to who we choose to give our hearts to. Better choices in who we choose, better choices in who we give our hearts to. And we need to be more mindful of the hearts of others that have been given to us. You know, Men need to do a better job of taking care of women's hearts, and women need to be more selective in who they choose to give their hearts to. Fellas, we need to do better by the ladies. And like I was saying through the intro of all of this, I know that, for some of us, we can see women as being a little difficult, but it's not all women. If you're with a woman that's difficult, why are you choosing to be with that woman that's difficult? you know, because the longer that you stay with someone that isn't compatible with you, it hardens you and it makes you believe that that is indicative of the world. But in a world, like I always say, of 8 billion people, I find it hard to believe that every single woman is difficult. I find it hard to believe that the majority of women are difficult. You know, you might just live in a pocket of difficult women, or maybe you're difficult. And her being difficult, you know, is just a reaction to you being difficult. Or maybe she is just difficult, you know, let's be real about it. But yeah, it's all about the heart and protecting the hearts that we give, that we've been given, and um, being mindful of who we choose to give our heart to protect. So with all of that said, in Women's Appreciation Month, I want to express my sincere appreciation for all the women out there, the mothers, the sisters, the aunts, the grandmothers. I appreciate you all. I love you all. And as me and Reggie, yes, that Reggie, as we discussed in a previous episode of this joint, love, I don't really know is necessarily the problem. What we all need to work on, men and women, we need to work on liking each other better, because a woman will say she loves men and a man will say he loves women, but we don't show that we like each other. And in episodes in the past, when we've drilled down and had guests on the show and we've asked them, do you like men? And you really drill down on it, the honest answer is no. Me and Reggie, we've discussed on this episode, on this podcast, how we have issues liking women. We don't necessarily like women in the way that we should. And I think that's indicative of most people because of our experiences with the opposite sex. Or, well, I don't really know how gay people get down. I imagine that my life would be a whole lot simpler if I were gay. It seems like dealing, because I know how to deal with guys. It just seems like being with a guy would be simpler. I'm just not attracted to guys. And the same thing with women. Women knowing women, you would think that the relationship would be simpler if they got together. But I guess it goes back into the whole thing about why I believe that being gay is not a choice, because I never chose to be heterosexual. Yeah, there was never a fork in the road where I thought, do I like men or do I like women? I just always liked women, was attracted to women. Yeah, liking them, that's a whole different thing. But the point in all of this is that we need to learn to like each other. We need to learn to like each other. We need to work on that. The love, I think we got. We need to like each other. And I think when we like each other, combine that with loving each other, I think it'll make it easier for us to give our hearts and to receive hearts and care for the hearts that we've received. So that's all that I have to say for today. Ladies, I appreciate you. I appreciate having you all in our lives, because like I've said many times, uh, if there were no women in this world, God help us all, because I don't think men would wear deodorant. I don't think men would get haircuts. I don't think men would shave. I don't think men would make any effort to do anything. Ladies, and me and Reggie say this all the time, you all do not understand the power that you have over us. You all are the reason that we do a good 90 something percent of the things that we do. That guy driving that sports car, really, does he need a sports car? If that dude, if it didn't bring him attention from women, he would drive a Corolla. That $500 Versace, that Versace shirt, that $300 Gucci belt that he buys, it's all for y'all. Like women will do that stuff to impress other women. Guys, we do that stuff to impress you. So women, you are, our motivation, and you need to act in that way. You need to embrace the power that you have over us and stop giving your power away to these cats out here that don't deserve it. I'm done being sappy, which means I'm done with this episode. My main man, Reggie. I know I beat you up a little bit on this episode. You want to come defend yourself? You want to say something? I guess not. So I love Reggie. That's my guy. Anyway, I'm gonna let you all go. Thank you all for coming. I think it's been like 2 weeks. We need to get on a quicker schedule, and I will. Yeah, but big things are happening. I'm excited about. So take care. All that good stuff. Talk to you later. Yeah. Bye.